Greetings and welcome to each of you joining me today. I'm Pam Christian, your host of this weekly podcast where I seek to help us explore current events from a biblical and prophetic perspective. My guest today is Derek Johnson, who is retired from military and has surfaced in recent years as one who has uniquely studied government and public documents from his military knowledge to help people understand what is truly going on in our United States government. He and many of us who have been doing our own research were considered by most to be conspiracy theorists, tin hat loons, which means we suffered considerable pain from family and friends who criticized us, sometimes severely. But we knew we were on the right track, as unpopular as it was, and we persevered. We didn't waver in our efforts, and over the past 4 years now, more people are awake than not, and we're being blessed with the restoration of relationships, and we are making new relationships with those who have come to understand more about the truth, who now consider us trustworthy. And to those of you who consider me your truth advocate, I sincerely thank you. It's been a very tough road, but the good news is more people today are awake than ever, and we are reaching the pinnacle of truth and the apex of time when we will see the hand of God administer His justice. For all of us who belong to Jesus, we win. No matter how things may appear in the moment, the truth is we win. And we don't just win in the end when God has fully dealt with evil and creates a new heaven and earth. We win in the interim. And I prophetically believe it begins this year of 2024. More of what I have to share from Derek will bring this out. But beyond Derek, through many other people, prophets, researchers, teachers, and more, God has graciously been encouraging His people to not grow weary in doing good, to continue to fight the good fight without giving up, expecting God to come through. One such prophet I have great respect for is Dr. Patricia Green, who recently posted a powerful prophecy about Passover in this year of 2024, which began April 22nd and ended April 30th. I wanted to play it for you, but it's around 9 minutes, and with everything I have pre-recorded with Derek, I just don't have the time. But you need to take the time to hear God's prophetic word, where He tells us through Dr. Patricia Green that this Passover of 2024 was marked as a unique Passover in all of history. God said He marked this particular Passover so that the whole world will come to identify events as before Passover and after Passover 2024. After Passover will be marked by people being delivered from darkness, slavery, shame, anguish, fear, depression, anxiety, and thoughts of suicide. After Passover, God's people will be recognized as those who do not fear the enemy or the terror that the enemy causes, confident the enemy's efforts will not come near us. God said revival is about to break forth as never before, and in preparation, God wants all of His children to come into agreement over 5 specific matters which He listed in the prophetic word. I have shared before, I don't believe we are in the last of the last days, but we are living in an impression or a foreshadow of the last days. I believe these days are intended by God to wake people up to truth. I believe God wants the truth to strengthen, equip, empower, and embolden His people in an incredible victory over evil such as the world has never seen. The popular interpretation of the rapture is for God to rescue His people from the evils of the world so we will escape the great tribulation. But that's not what I believe the Bible actually teaches. I believe the Bible explains the last days will be like the days of Noah. Well, what happened to Noah? His family was the only righteous family remaining in God's sight. And if you think about it, Noah and his family were actually left behind, while all the evil people were removed. And that's what I believe the Bible teaches. I'm not saying there won't be a rapture. I'm saying I don't believe it will be a rescue from evil rapture, but a graduation for our faithfulness in overcoming evil rapture. I've shared quite a bit about this in the past, and you can count on me sharing more about this in the future. I think you'd agree with me, however, that just because something is popular doesn't make it right or correct. And I think these past 4 years especially, God has been intent on waking people up to truth, not only about the evil that's been driving our world governments, but also about the existence of evil itself, about the existence of God, and a proper understanding of God's revealed plans for the people of the earth. If you are a regular listener, then you know back in July 2022, I produced a 3-part podcast with one of the parts titled The Power of Agreement, which is entirely consistent with the recent word through Dr. Patricia Green. Recall, I have always said I don't hold the office of a prophet, but I do seek the Lord to learn all I can, and with His help to be among those who by His Holy Spirit speak words of prophecy. You'll find the link to Dr. Patricia Green's word and my July 2022 podcast in the show notes. Besides feeling completely affirmed by the word God provided through Dr. Patricia Green, I also received a voicemail from a friend who read the first book in my Faith to Live By series titled Examine Your Faith, Finding Truth in a World of Lies. I want you to hear, in her own words, what she had to say about that book.
Good morning, Pam. It's Saturday morning, and just wanted to thank you for writing such a well-researched and well-presented book. I have to compliment you on all your efforts. It was truly a work of love and dedication, you could tell. And if I could remember just a fraction of all the references, the scripture, everything, the historical documentation, I would be well equipped. Anyway, just wanted to compliment you and thank you for sharing that book. Great job. Well written, well presented, and thank you so much for sharing it. You have a great day. Bye.
As you can imagine, that blesses me so much. I ask you each and every week to contact me and let me know how this podcast blesses you or some topic you want me to cover. And if you have benefited, even in the smallest way from my work, I need you to let me know. Yes, I can see the numbers of people in the countries all around the world who download my podcast, but I don't want you to remain a nameless, faceless number. I need your personal connection. Listen, this is my 200th episode, and I come up to renew my podcast contract in July. So you have to give me plenty of good reason to continue doing what I'm doing. I look forward to hearing from you, please. Just send me a quick email at faithtoliveby@PamelaChristianMinistries.com. I know about 50 of you were sent that same book as a Christmas gift from me with the request that you post a review. And if you haven't done that yet, I would really appreciate you doing so. All of my books in the Faith to Live By series are written to help us confidently know about our Christian faith and how to best apply our faith to make a difference in the world. Listen to the end of this podcast to learn where you can see all of my books and also learn about the discount code you can use at checkout. Okay, now to set up my interview with Derek Johnson. One of the often repeated phrases Derek makes is, quote, "Unless you follow this stuff regularly, you'll have a hard time believing," end quote. When it comes to the understanding Derek has acquired, that is true, but I know you don't have the time to follow it every single day. So, when he's on my program, I try to do my very best to bring you a Reader's Digest version to help you remain informed. At the same time, I don't want you to just accept what I and my guests have to share, which is why I always offer extensive show notes complete with links for you to look up what is presented with this podcast and decide for yourself. Many of my past podcasts provide background to what I now share in summary. For hundreds of years now, evil has influenced men and women with wealth and power working in and through them to do Satan's evil bidding. Satan has always wanted to dethrone God, which means he must work to overcome God's plans and destroy anything and everything that is aligned with God. There is not a nation in the world that Satan and his minions have not been working in. This is how the self-appointed elite who seek to have a one-world government have been able to advance their plans to this day. This does not mean that God has been caught off guard, not by a long shot. Rather, God is allowing the wheat, or the righteous, to grow alongside the tares, the unrighteous, with plans to deal with the tares once they are fully grown, just as we read in Matthew chapter 13. The tares are weeds that look like wheat until more fully matured, at which time God assures us he will deal with the unrighteous. Every nation has a different history of how evil has corrupted their governments. For the United States, it's becoming more evident that our righteous republic was hijacked in its infancy when a parallel secret government was established as a corporation, ultimately complete with its own constitution. Evil has flourished and become interconnected with governments from other nations, intent on grabbing world power to overcome individual sovereign nations. For the United States, especially since the 1960s, this evil parallel government has grown and become more emboldened, doing less and less in secret, believing they had grown to such a point they had the power to act openly. There's actually a term for this coined by H.G. Wells in his book, The Open Conspiracy, Blueprints for a World Revolution, published in 1928. And you guessed it, the term is open conspiracy. Now, fast forward to 2016 to see God's intervention in the plans to take over America when Donald John Trump was duly elected as President of the United States. It is my understanding that a group of white hat generals and other intel, government, and corporate leaders sought DJT to run as president, knowing he had what would be required to stay the long term and get the job of recovering the United States government done according to law and order. I have not heard of any white hat clergy involved in this effort, but I sure pray we will learn of some who were in the future. With Donald John Trump as president, adhering entirely to the Constitution our founding fathers penned, with the evidence of the government going rogue, they enacted a continuity of government to assure national essential functions were protected for the good of the people. Derek will address current events from his viewpoint, including the recent Iran attack on Israel, and what we need to understand is actually taking place through all of this for the entire world. I'll be back to explain more of what you'll hear from Derek, so here's my interview with Derek Johnson. Derek Johnson, I want to thank you once again for being back on my podcast. There's so much going on in the world right now. I know you and I had a little bit of time to talk before we've actually started the recording aspect of this interview. Let's start with the idea of continuity of government, just to get the audience up to speed. And then I want to move directly into the events that have recently occurred with Iran launching 300 missiles and drones against Israel. So first, with the continuity of government.
Yeah, people always asking to prove the military occupation. And I'm like, the quickest way to prove the military occupation outside of President Trump's capitulation tour, which was Chapter 12 of the Law of War Manual, in order to have an occupation with military around the world, especially because it's a world occupation, it's not just the U.S., you have to have a continuity of operations, because an occupation means the military goes in control. So it's basically a martial law. It's really what it is, but it's just not a known martial law to certain people. But the ones that have heard me and others speaking about this, which is very few of us as far as like the in-depths of it, you have a continuity of operations. And that's also why a lot of people that are listening, they if they were on Telegram, they kept hearing people say, "Oh, they're throwing a coup, they're throwing a coup," and I'm like, "No, they got that mixed up with a coup. It's COOP is the acronym for Continuity of Operations Plan." So when you go look at history, we've always had a continuity of operations plan, and it's always been called a continuity of government, a COG. But the most recent publication was January 17th, 2017. And in bullet point 3 of that, it tells people specifically to start, basically in layman's terms, to start with this one. Anything before it, this one supersedes it. So that gives everybody a timestamp. January 17th, 2017. Well, that was 3 days before whom took his famous oath with the military behind him. So there's a timestamp. You start with that one. Then in June 13th, 2017, FCD2 came out. So they're called Federal Continuity Directives 1 and 2. And those are like your umbrellas. Well, then you got to know where to go look for certain things. And the Federal Register is where we register executive orders, proclamations, and things of that nature from your president, your executive branch. So when you go look in there in the Federal Register, it's a lot of digging, and you got to know a lot how to type keywords, and it took forever to find them. But there's key dates in there. For the FCD1, it's 2018 to 2022. For FCD2, it was 2020 to 2024. So people can see that overlap. from the 2018 number, and then the 2020. So, when you go look in those FCDs, it outlines the three branches of government, and then they have what they call national essential functions. So, we're always going to have natural disasters, tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, things of that nature, which the government always has had a plan in place because we've been living quite a while now to know what regions of the U.S. have the tornadoes more frequent, have the floods more frequent. So they already have that planned out. So national essential functions. And then it tells during catastrophic events, even fires, it talks about fires, it talks about things like that. So people saw those fires. They don't forget about them now. People saw those fires way back in 2020 and 2021 era. So there was a lot of stuff that they were doing. They, meaning the military, the generals, though, more specifically. This is where history plays a lot of role. But the continuity of operations is just to make sure that the three branches of government keep going. Now, anybody who's been to D.C. in the last 2 or 3 years has seen it. It looks like a ghost town. A lot of things have moved to Texas. A lot of things have moved out of there. And I explained this last night on a podcast that, someone asked about D.C. and said, well, look, they still are going to have session, quote unquote, because why? That's called a continuity of operations, but it's more of a planned session. It's more planned. And then when they show you stuff on the media, they'll show the little pins on guys next to some of these congressmen and women. That's a U.S. Marshal pin. Now, the U.S. Marshal pin and the Secret Service look a lot alike, but that's where an expert on the Secret Service and the U.S. Marshal can zoom in and go, no, that's a U.S. Marshal pin. And everybody's been seeing the U.S. Marshals for quite a while now, over 3 years. So that shows you that they're planned and they're under an operation and they're under a continuity where there's certain things absolutely that we still have to do because we're still living. We're still living life out here. And that's all part of it.
All right. Now, you made the comment about the documents from 2018 to 2022 with the overlap of the documents from 2020 to 2024. It seems to me, with 2024 being designated, that we should look for some culmination of events in this year. Am I right?
Yes, and President Trump tells everybody, we're in the final battle. 2024 will be the final battle. November will be the final battle. November will be the most historical time period in the United States history. He has said that. I mean, and I was telling this last night. I said, if you're going by literal terms, I think we got to get back to that in the world. There's been things that, heck, even in my lifetime, someone's taken the word like dude or like, man, that's crazy. Crazy used to mean you were a cuckoo. Now people would say the word crazy, and it's a good thing. Well, there's some words that we can flip around like that, but there's some words that you can't flip in a different manner. And historical to me, history, that's your root word. It's going to make history. It's going to be historical. It'd be different if he said monumental. Monumental is something big, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be this thing that's forever talked about for many, 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 many years, hundreds of years. And President Trump says that November is going to be his historical day for our nation. All right. Now, I don't know if that means we're going to have an election or we're not going to have one. Doesn't matter. You hear that talk out there. It doesn't matter. What matters is the present right now and understanding what you've been through. Right. And I don't know if it's going to be a bookend on December 31st, 2024, or if that 2024 date is going to be November the 5th. No one knows that. But yeah, that's a great indication that everybody can say, "Ooh, man, it's been a little bumpy." But it's like I explained last night on this podcast. I said, when you're riding in an airplane and you're not a frequent flyer, and you're up there and all of a sudden that bad boy starts hitting turbulence. You think you're crashing. Oh gosh, we're falling. We're going, right? But that pilot's up there, the pilots in the cockpit and all the stewardess, they're like, it's not a big deal. Here, you want a drink? You want something to eat? And you're over there like, whoa, we're dying, we're crashing, right? So I've showed people that to say, hey, the turbulence is what you've been through lately, right? We had to go through some kind of rough patches and bumpy patches in order to get on the flip side. But the part that people aren't seeing is that, thank God, in your prayer before we started, you prayed for my purpose and your purpose and where God called you and where God called me. Well, guess what God called Donald Trump to do? Guess what God called all these world leaders to do? It took a massive group of men and women all over the world to come together on this. But once it was go time, there wasn't no turning back. See, this was something and when President Trump acknowledges this, he's the one who says specifically, even I didn't realize how deep the swamp really was. That was him telling everybody that, hey, we're not just taking out senior leaders. We're taking out as many people as we can find, tracing them all the way down, the rats, as they call them, and cleaning out the rats as far as we can. And guess who knew who they were? Not me and you. We don't know who they are. Now I have a better indication of who they might be as far as, you can trace certain kind of gangs and trace certain kind of terrorist organizations. However, who worked for all these politicians who were involved? That's the stuff that they know and you and I don't know. And that's what they're cleaning out. And, you hear people all the time saying they want change, change, change. Well, that change takes action. And that's what we've been in the last 8 years. So I do believe there's a bookend absolutely on the continuity. Now, the war, the military portion, there's always going to have to be a certain group of an entity that makes sure and maintains that this don't get out of hand again, as far as like subterranean warfare, which is trafficking and things of that nature. So I think we finally have the world leaders that came together. I know we do. I don't like to use the word think. I should say I know we do, because we see it daily, or I see it daily. The capitulation tour, those were the leaders that came together for the world, and those are the aircraft we have in and out of our nation every single day. And they just can't be there. Like Jaco, former Navy SEAL, and I were talking yesterday on his podcast. These aircraft cannot just be in our nation every single day without being under a specific order. So there's two things going on for the people: that military occupation and military operation, and then the continuity. But there will be a silver lining in the sky someday soon, because men and women's life are on the line.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that has really come out more and more for those of us who are looking beyond traditional mainstream media, we are seeing that the swamp is deep and it's very interconnected with evil, corrupt people from other countries. This is not exclusive to the United States by any means. And what is actually taking place is a group of leaders and allies of nations who have agreed that the evil has gotten out of hand, and they are working together. Now, we recently had the very unexpected launch of over 300 missiles and drones by Iran, not Hamas, not one of their proxies, but by Iran, onto Israel. Tell me your thoughts about that.
Well, that's the part that gets sensitive for certain people, and that's where I tell people all the time. I'm like, well, if you're not following it every single day, and I don't mean religiously in a sacrilegious way, but if you're not following it like keenly all day long, every day, but also if you're not following it from the right standpoint, meaning we have publications from the military that most people wouldn't see, but you can see because it's public. It's not classified. I've put these out on all my pages. There was an unconventional warfare publication in 2016 that was right before the Military Justice Act of May. So April 2016, this unconventional warfare came out. And it's got a diagram in there, and I tell everybody, go study that one diagram and read every line, Google what they mean on every line, and study that one diagram. Then the Military Justice Act. The Military Justice Act of 2016, the month later in May, specified by the Supreme Court, specified that military law and federal government are separate. They specified that, and they had to do this on paper because we have so many Americans that are all politics but no legislation. Mm-hmm. So But those are the very key ones who will want to argue and fuss and try to take you to court over something. So you got to document stuff. You got to record it in history. So that's recorded. Then you move forward with everything that I talk about, and everybody will just have to go look me up because we don't have time for that. But the military occupation, the capitulation tour that Donald Trump went on, that is in chapter 12 of the Law of War Manual. So there's your visual evidence that that happened. So when you look in Israel, when you look in Jordan, when you look in Lebanon, when you look at Egypt, when you look at Saudi Arabia, when you look at Iraq, when you look at Kuwait, all right, and you know the position. We've always been in Kuwait. We've had Kuwait for years. All right. Then you go look at Iraq, 1990. This has been going on for years. There's a biblical aspect to this for the Christians out there, a major biblical, because in the Bible, it does say any nation against Israel will be decimated, will be damned, will be obliterated. And President Trump's been using those terms. Then you got to know about the Red Sea and the Persian Gulf and the Mediterranean. Well, we have ships. They've been putting this out. We have ships all in all those regions. I've been following the aircraft daily. We have aircraft all over Israel. We have aircraft all over Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, and also out in the Mediterranean and over in Turkey as well. And then when you think of Iran, Iran's always been a problem. We've always had Iran popping off at the mouth, as we say it, all the way back to the 60s. All right, so Iran is one of those countries that Donald Trump didn't do a capitulation with. He did in Saudi Arabia, all right, and he shut them down really quick in Afghanistan. That president over there popped off at the mouth on President Trump, and what happened? The mother of all bombs hit a facility over there, 25,000-pound bomb, which would take out a mountain. All right, and that's what they did. And after that, we had no more issues with Afghanistan. All right, so President Trump's doing what we've always should have done. We're never supposed to be in these countries in the first place. All right, but when you go in, it's like Jacob and I talked about. If you take out Saddam Hussein, there's already one other guy up under him ready to go. So unless you obliterate, unless you decimate, then you're always going to have that. So the 300 missiles, all right, when you go back and you look at what happened in Israel, this is why it's important to keep up with this stuff. Israel on October the 7th, all right, which was the anniversary of Yom Kippur, all right, very important in history, but it was a 50th anniversary of Yom Kippur. In the Bible, 50 equals a jubilee, all right, and that's very key for biblical terms. 50 years is a jubilee. It normally means something happens in a good favor for the Jewish culture, for Jesus Christ, Yeshua, all right? But we won't get too deep into that, but October the 7th, they said there was an attack over there, all right? And that's what kicked off this war in Israel. Well, in 1 week's time, my friend Siggy Flicker, she was born in a bomb shelter during the 6-Day War in Israel, the famous 6-Day War. She was born in a bomb shelter. So she loves when I take up for Israel, but from this standpoint. So when you look at Israel, I said, Siggy, big as Israel? She'll go, oh, it's the size of New Jersey. I said, okay, so let me ask this. Back here in this Army publication, 2019, in our publications, in the military, in 2019, there was a publication put out called Subterranean Conflict, the operational implications of a subterranean conflict. One of the chapters says Hamas, Gaza-Egypt cross-border operations. This was way back in 2019. And it outlines with the articles that were put out in 2018, 2019, with the U.S. putting out to us, the Americans, and us veterans saying, hey, the Army is spending $500 million training our soldiers for our next wars, our next wars will be in mega cities, not inside them, but beneath them. And then there was an article put out in August 2019 that aligns with all the others about the sewers and the tunnel wars. Johnson & Johnson lost the case out in Oklahoma. But what does President Trump say all the time? We're not paying for it anymore. Someone else will. He's the one who went after pharmaceuticals. He's the one who went after opioids. He's the one who launched the war on trafficking. How did they pay for trafficking? Where's that money come from? All right. And these pharmaceutical companies. Johnson & Johnson lost a case in Oklahoma in August, the same month all these publications were coming out about our next wars will be in sewers and tunnels. All right. In the Army manual of ours and the Canadian Army manual, there's a number in there. $572 million was spent to train our soldiers for subterranean conflict. How much did Johnson & Johnson pay in August? $572 million? What are the odds of that? They're not. All right, so that's how you tie this stuff in. Now you fast forward to Israel. Here's the Army publication 5 years ago saying what was coming in Israel. All right, in Israel, in 1 week's time, Siggy loves when I rattle this off. In 1 week's time, ladies and gentlemen, listening. All right, I'm going to say them as slow but as fast as I can. In 1 week's time, all these nations were in Israel. United States, we had Syria, let's see, so Tunisia, Algeria, Belgium, Netherlands, Switzerland, Sweden, Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, Canada, New Zealand, Romania, Thailand, Japan, United Arab Emirates. We even had Russia over there. And that's just a few of them. I won't list all of them. But all those nations were in Israel in 1 week's time after the quote unquote bombing or in the start of the war. All right. Then the other thing is Kamala was telling the whole world then that we won't have any U.S. troops in Israel. They were there before and after she said that. Now, fast forward just a couple weeks ago, quote unquote Biden and quote unquote Kamala said there will be harsh consequences if Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel attack Rafah. All right. The same week, Biden, quote unquote, and the Biden administration, quote unquote, was sending 1,800, 2,000-pound bombs to Israel and Netanyahu. So that's like, I hate using this example, but you have to be sometimes, graphic with people. That's like one of your friends telling you they want to kill themselves and you hand them a pistol. I mean, why would we be sending them 2,000-pound bombs, but turn around and say, well, you can't attack somebody? That's the stupidest. So when you follow that, now come to the Iran. Iran attacks Israel, and what's Biden say? We stand with Israel. Well, you just told them a couple of weeks ago that you're not standing with them. So all that, if people are following the drama of that and you're hanging on to that, then you're not seeing the picture here. Subterranean warfare is the picture. We have that in Army manuals. All that other is a distraction. They're cleaning out the tunnels. They're cleaning out all these interconnections, as you just said earlier, and they've all connected. And they're also connected to whom? Politicians, right? Corrupt politicians. Not all politicians, but a lot of them. So this is a massive clean out. And the odds that 300 missiles launched from Iran with all the air traffic in the sky over there, and they said in the mainstream article that it only injured one person. 300 missiles didn't hit a single aircraft, didn't hit a single building. It's all part of the distraction. And when you go read that unconventional warfare manual that was put out and that diagram I'm talking about, it shows you all this and how you have to get into the minds of people to get their attention, but yet not completely get their attention, just to start kind of putting this out and drop it in their breadbasket and get a little taste of it. That's what that is to me. Because if this was an all-out different kind of war, if we were in another just a regular life situation, it wouldn't look like that. And Israel would have been absolutely decimating these other nations for doing so. And they're not doing that. It shows that someone's got the reins and it's something else going on. Well, that something else is the subterranean warfare, because it's all outlined in our manuals. It's outlined in the news. And that's what people need to see.
Derek, you're always very helpful to me and to my audience to help us decipher what's really going on, what we see and what's really going on. And I agree with you. There's a lot of optics that are put out there that are intended to deceive us and have us look over here when what's really going on is at another location. So I want to thank you once again for helping us with this. I'm going to have you back. Let's keep our eyes on Israel, keep our eyes on what's going on in the Middle East. And as things change, I would like to have you back.
Absolutely. And that's what I tell people. Look, just we're in the final battle. So just hang on a little bit longer. Trust God and trust that God put Donald Trump here for this appointed time. He's the face. He's telling you. And I don't mean this in a bad way when I say enjoy the ride, but if we live to be 100, we're going to live through this. So enjoy history.
Absolutely. So you heard Derek use the terms continuity of government, or COG, and continuity of operations plan, or COOP, which has been underway for the sake of the American people. You also heard him talk about the coalition of nations that are fighting evil worldwide in a subterranean war. The wars that are occurring above ground are intended by the evil forces who are losing as displays of their power in attempt to control the masses. Derek also referred to the capitulation tour, which others refer to as the Worldwide Submission Tour. When DJT was in office, he met with many heads of states, which the news covered, mainstream media covered it, but with no real explanation as to what was going on. To help you, I have provided several links for you to view official documents and even a brief video Donald John Trump personally circulated again just this week. This information reveals that DJT and the white hats behind him orchestrated a brilliant plan to put all the heads of state who are working for a new world order on notice. I've also provided you the link to an excellent video based on the research of Derek Johnson titled The Greatest Show on Earth, a film by Nick Alvier. I hope you'll use these links for yourself so you can join the growing number of us whose confidence is being bolstered about the certain victory over evil we will experience in our day. I've said before that this year of 2024 will be monumental, or perhaps consistent with what Derek said, I should say historical, as we will see the intervention of God as never before. Through trusted prophets such as Julie Green and Amanda Grace, God has been reassuring us that He has all things under control, and He has stated what He specifically expects of us so we can remain in His sovereign provision and protection. Use the links in the show notes to hear recent prophecies from both Julie Green and Amanda Grace. If you want more evidence that the enemy of God is in a panic, running scared, and making tremendous blunders, just listen to the reports on Biden's recent White House Correspondents' Dinner. Instead of presenting his strengths to the people in attendance and the media who would broadcast the occasion, Biden spent his entire time attempting to smear Donald John Trump. This is clear evidence that what DJT and the White Hats are doing has them on the offensive in a major way. This episode of my podcast first posts on May 1st, 2024, and tomorrow, May 2nd, 2024, is the National Day of Prayer for the United States. Believing that the majority of you who listen to this podcast are praying Christians, I'm asking you to make this an international day of prayer. I'm calling on you to take action, to look up the links in the show notes, to learn more on the topics, and for you to be in earnest prayer. One of the things we need to pray about is for evil people to choose to repent before it's too late, and I firmly believe the window of God's grace is coming to a close. My guess is that Pentecost, May 19th, 2024, will be when the window of grace rapidly begins to close, and we will actually see God's judgment in our midst in the month of June. I don't say that prophetically. I say that just as one who has done research and putting the puzzle pieces together. We'll see if I'm right or not. God has graciously provided so many prophecies to comfort, guide, and direct His people. Certainly, the prophecy He gave through Dr. Patricia Green for us to agree in prayer is essential for today. He called it the power of agreement. Let's tap into that. Please use the link in the show notes to watch that prophecy, then pray according to the specific 5 points God asks of us. Additionally, we must pray for the Biden administration to not be successful with the World Health Organization or in their own right to declare a climate emergency that could give Biden 130 wartime-like powers. I don't have time to explain this, so please use the link in the show notes to learn about this. I also ask you to join with Intercessors for America to pray specifically for the people and the agendas behind the serious unrest on college campuses under the guise of anti-Semitism. In reality, the self-appointed elite are using the banner of anti-Semitism in their effort to push for a one-world government. The enemy senses the squeeze he's in with so many people waking up to truth, and through people like George Soros, he is chaotically doing all he can to cause destruction. You'll find a link to the Intercessors for America article in the show notes. I understand that Sean Feucht, Eric Metaxas, and others went to Columbia University to peacefully counter the campus unrest and the hate-mongering against Israel, and they were successful in drawing more supporters than the protesters, enabling them to shout louder and proclaim truth louder than the protesters. Rumor is that Sean and others are traveling next to Cal Poly Humboldt, which was closed for the remainder of the semester because of the pro-Palestinian occupation of the campus buildings. Think of what that does for the graduating class and their commencement exercises. Let's pray for them to realize the truth and join Sean Feucht in promoting truth. Don't be fooled. The same way people were paid to cause the riots in the streets and serious damage and looting with the BLM and the Antifa groups, and what happened on January 6th and the summer of 2020, so are the protests and hate-mongering being funded and organized today. Chants of death to Israel and death to America, claims that Israel has no right to defend itself, and more, are efforts by the self-appointed elite to gain control of the two nations that stand in their way of accomplishing their goal for a one-world order. Earnest prayer to the one true God for His will to be done is the way we will overcome this evil. Headlines also reveal people are seeking to arrest Prime Minister Netanyahu via the International Criminal Court. We have to understand the same way the United States government has been infiltrated by the deep state, so has the Israeli government. Look at the utterly insane abuse of the laws and courts being levied against President Trump. It's much the same in Israel. Please be in prayer for Prime Minister Netanyahu and our Commander-in-Chief, Donald J. Trump. Lastly, for prayer, read the article about the 5 European Union countries that are pushing to have a Palestinian state recognized by the end of May, and pray that evil governments will not be ratified and instead exposed for what they are and rejected by the people of the world. Even more intense times are imminent. But for those of us who are properly aligned with God, obedient to what He has asked of us to do in these times, we will be like His Hebrew children at the time of the Exodus, who were spared the ravages of God's judgment against evil in the days of Moses. Next week, I may have Alex Newman on as my guest. In any event, as you've come to experience, you can count on me to help us all discover and live in life-giving truth and experience all the hope truth provides. Please listen to these closing announcements and make a point of signing up, subscribing, or taking advantage of the outstanding opportunities I bring you. Before I close, I have even more information about the trip to Greece that I hope to make happen in 2025. We are looking at traveling in the month of October, and I'm interviewing 3 highly recommended Christian travel tour companies at this present time to get the best deal. What I'm looking at is a tour group of about 30 people, a good size to work with, and we already have about 10 people who've expressed interest. We'll be landing in Athens and then be escorted on a tour we can call the Steps of Paul. Each of us need to get our own air travel to Athens International Airport, arriving on what we will consider day 1. Hotel accommodations, ground transportation, and some meals are included from day 1 through day 7, when we'll return to Athens so you can catch your return flight home. We want to plan one night where we can all dine together in a banquet room or some such thing, allowing us the opportunity to worship together and learn together. The cost for the tour is estimated to be about $3,000 per person. Again, that's just an early advance estimate. However, we won't know the actual cost until the details are agreed upon. I would like to have the details agreed upon by the end of February 2025, about 8 months ahead of time, so people can make definitive plans. So, if you think you'd like to be part of the Faith to Live By Christian tour with me in Greece in 2025, just send me an email with the word Greece in the subject line, and the number of people that you expect to be in your party in the body of the email. My email is faithtoliveby@PamelaChristianMinistries.com. There is no commitment or obligation from you at this point. You're just expressing interest. And when it comes closer to time to get confirmations, around January or February, then we'll talk about the deposits, the final payments, the travel insurance, and more. Again, if you want me to put together a Christian tour for 2025 to Greece, send me an email to faithtoliveby@PamelaChristianMinistries.com with the words Greece Tour in the subject line and the number of people you would bring in the body of the email if the trip becomes a reality. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email. If you like what you hear from me with this podcast, I highly recommend my book series, my award-winning blog, connecting with me on social media where I can cover many more topics than I can with this weekly podcast. Also, consider signing up for my certificate course in apologetics. My aim with that course is to help people learn how to not only use apologetics to share truth with others, but to help Christian leaders incorporate apologetics into their respective ministries so many more Christians know how to share their faith. Learn more from Solid Lives Training Center using the link in the show notes. You know, my whole goal with this podcast is to help people discover and live in life-giving truth and to experience all the hope truth provides. You can, and I hope you do, personally share truth with others. But have you thought about how many more people you could reach by partnering with me? Help me grow this podcast, get my books into more people's hands, and talk me up to others to get more speaking engagements and increase this podcast audience. Then together as partners, we will be making a much greater impact than we can on our own. There are several ways you can choose to partner with me. Certainly telling others about me and my ministry along with prayers is among the top of the list. There's nothing more powerful than word-of-mouth endorsement or personal referrals. Buying my books and products is another way. All of my books in my Faith to Live By series were written to help people better understand the Christian faith and how to successfully live it out. Visit my website and get any or all of these books with a deep 20% discount by using the word TRUTH, T-R-U-T-H, at checkout. I also welcome donations, but for now they're not tax deductible. However, I'm working on that for you, so listen in the weeks to come to learn more to be able to support me through donations that hopefully will be tax deductible. Supporting the businesses I feature as affiliate partners is yet another way you can partner with me. I seek to find affiliates who can offer you goods and services you need, and I have some very exciting money-saving, America First goods and services you won't want to miss out on. I have a new affiliate partner who has amazing products that can help you with a number of different ailments. It's called QE Strong. Using the frequency of quantum energy, their products have helped hundreds of people overcome issues of pain, anxiety, sleeplessness, and more. I have recently conducted an interview with Rob Renee, the founder, and I encourage you to listen to that in order to learn more. Use the promo code FTLB at checkout to get an additional 15% discount on top of the discounts they already provide. Also, if you're like me, you're tired of paying very high prices for cable television, and you've been waiting to find the right company who shares your values to replace your cable service. Well, I found it. It's called Q Streaming. That's C-U-E, Streaming. They provide over 3,000 channels, including live TV with local stations from across the United States networks, sports networks, movie networks, and pay-per-view events. You get all of that for about half what most cable companies charge, and there's no contract, just a monthly subscription. Visit faithtoliveby.myqstreaming.com. Look around and sign up to start viewing the programs you like at a fraction of what you're paying now, all while you are supporting a Christian-owned and operated company that exclusively uses word-of-mouth advertising so as not to spend money on commercial advertisement that supports the woke movement. And don't forget, when it comes to your health, I have two different affiliate partners, Dr. Zelenko's Z-Stack Supplements and Cup of Health. Cup of Health is dedicated to helping us detoxify our bodies and get to an optimal and healthy weight. I personally love their Java Boost drink, and I think you will too. So check out all their products, and be sure to use my promo code at checkout, FTLB, and they also will offer a 20% discount on all the products. Visit cupofhealth.com. Dr. Zelenko's Z-Stack supplements contain zinc, quercetin, and vitamins C and D, which are formulated in just the right amounts to help you boost your immune system. Your immune system can be weakened by over 300 different primary immunodeficiency disorders, poor diet, lack of sleep, and adverse reactions to vaccines. I'm personally taking the supplement, and I can tell you I've been around many people who have had COVID and other ailments, and I have not been sick. Use the link in the show notes or go to his website and use the promo code FTLB to receive a 5% coupon discount. And if you choose to become a subscriber, you can receive a 10% discount each and every month. And regarding your finances, I want you to know about Dr. Kirk Elliott. He's a personal wealth advisor. I recently conducted another interview with Kirk that I especially want you to hear in light of the present-day banking system and economic uncertainty. Dr. Elliott offers free consultations to learn more about your personal considerations and to decide what might be a good strategy for you and your financial goals. Call Kirk at 1-720-605-3900 or contact him and his team using the link in the show notes. Again, his and all my affiliate partners' contact details are in the show notes. Of course, you need to do your own due diligence to make your own decisions what to purchase, but to help you, I am researching companies, interviewing their representatives, and using their products or services myself to provide you with any personal recommendation I can. When you purchase my books, products, or services, or products and services from any of my affiliates, you get something you want, and at the same time, you support me. It's truly a benefit for us all. So shop for yourself or shop to get gifts for friends and family. Your support is greatly appreciated. Again, if this ministry has blessed you in any way, please consider partnering with me and my vision to bring truth to as many people as possible. Consider getting my award-winning books available from my website. The series is also called Faith to Live By, and when you purchase through my web store, be sure to use the promo code TRUTH, TRUTH, to get a 20% discount on your entire order. I'd also appreciate you letting me know how this podcast impacts you and what you're doing now in response to the equipping you've received through me. My email is faithtoliveby@PamelaChristianMinistries.com. If you like the content and the resource material I bring with this podcast, you'll find much more by connecting with me through my blog. In fact, my blog has been awarded 2 unsolicited awards for Christian content. And I'm also very active on social media. I can cover many more topics there than I can with this weekly podcast. You can also subscribe to my complimentary bi-monthly e-newsletter. As a new subscriber, you can choose one of 3 gifts I offer in appreciation for your subscription. Subscribing will make you a preferred member where you'll receive special announcements and offers not available to others. And by subscribing, should anything happen to my podcast, and the internet is really volatile right now, I'll have a way to contact you so we can stay in touch. To receive even more, please be sure to check out my dedicated podcast listeners page called Beyond the Podcast. Here's where we can connect exclusively, and you can download complimentary devotionals, resources, and more. Depending upon where you listen to my podcast, if you've enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on iTunes, Spotify, Google, or wherever these features are available. Your review helps the show reach more people and spread the gospel, and it helps people learn how to better apply their Christian faith. I hope you'll join me next week and tell your friends and family to listen right here on Faith to Live By, where we learn how to gain spiritual victory over life's issues. Until next week, I'm Pam Christian, asking you to remember Christ died for us. The least we can do is live for Him.